My name is Tessa Monroe. I'm 31 years old. A senior strategic analyst with the Department of Homeland Security. Tomorrow, I'll be sitting across from my father and sister at a federal tech security review. They've spent 6 months preparing for. They don't know that I'll be there, and they certainly don't know I'm the final signature on whether their proposal moves forward or gets shut down permanently. 5 years ago, I walked out of my childhood home with 2 duffel bags and a government job offer. My dad didn't say goodbye. My sister Melanie called it a phase. I had always been the quiet one, the backup plan. Melanie was the future of our family. The shining one? The MBA grad, the girl boss dad couldn't stop bragging about. I was the mistake. The one who chose civil service over corporate power. I don't get it, Tess, Dad once said to me, shaking his head. You're smart. You could have been something. That was the last full conversation we ever had. Tonight, I'm home again. Not because I miss them, but because I want them to have one last night where they think I'm still nobody. Because tomorrow, when their boss calls me ma'am in front of the entire boardroom, they'll understand everything I never said. I pulled into the driveway at exactly 6:04 p.m. My government-issued sedan looked out of place. Parked next to Melanie's pristine Lexus SUV and Dad's sleek black company car. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, letting the engine idle. I didn't feel nervous, just still, that kind of stillness I'd learned to carry with me in high-stakes environments. People think silence means weakness, but silence, when used right, is power. The porch light was on. Same bulb that flickered when I left 5 years ago. Same faded home is where the heart is, sign above the door. I knocked once, out of habit. It's open. My mom's voice called from the kitchen. Of course it was. I stepped in. Same floral air freshener. Same crowded photo wall. Melanie's graduation, Melanie's wedding, Melanie's networking gala. Not a single picture of me. Not even the agency award. I mailed them last Christmas. Dinner's almost ready, Mom said, brushing flour from her apron as I stepped into the kitchen. Melanie and Greg are on their way. She just got promoted again. Did you hear? I smiled faintly. That's great. She's leading the entire proposal strategy team now. Big government contract coming up. National security stuff. Your dad says it's their biggest pitch yet. I bit the inside of my cheek. Their biggest pitch. For a proposal I was tasked to assess. I glanced at the table. 6 seats. Dad would sit at the head. Melanie on his right. Me somewhere near the end. Like always, they arrived at 6:30 sharp. Melanie swept in with a bottle of wine she couldn't pronounce. Greg wore a blazer over a golf polo and shook my hand like I was his old RA from business school. Still working for the government? Melanie asked as she poured wine. Yeah, I said simply. Dad didn't even look up. Bet that's steady, he muttered, cutting into the roast. Must be weird not having a real office or promotions. I mean, no offense, but you're not exactly climbing any ladders, right? I laughed lightly. My ID badge, tucked inside my purse upstairs, said otherwise. Melanie jumped in. You ever think about switching to the private sector? I mean, I could maybe get you an interview at my company. You know, doing admin stuff or procurement. Something safe. I nodded slowly. Thanks, I'll think about it. They meant well, or at least, they thought they did. What they didn't know was that the very contract they were so proud of, the one they'd built their bonuses and reputations around, that proposal had been flagged. Flagged for misaligned security protocols, outdated architecture, and potential fraud indicators in the budget allocation. I flagged it. Tomorrow, they'd pitch it again, this time directly to the Department of Homeland Security's Office of Cyber Defense, where I now serve as lead assessment officer. I'm not just attending the meeting. I'm the one running it. I excused myself after dinner and went upstairs to my old bedroom. It still had the same lavender paint I'd chosen when I was 13. The corkboard was still covered with outdated calendars, soccer medals, and a faded acceptance letter to Stanford, one I'd turned down to pursue federal service training. None of the life I built after that moment was displayed here. No photos from the counterterrorism summit I spoke at. No mention of the encrypted data recovery protocol I helped develop for the DHS. No framed news article from the Hill that named me one of the 25 under 35 public sector game changers. I had given up expecting acknowledgement a long time ago, but acknowledgement wasn't what I came for. Downstairs, they were laughing, talking about Melanie's next big move. Talking over me again, Let them, because tomorrow morning, I'll walk into that glass-walled conference room wearing a blazer and heels, holding a federal folder with my name etched on the spine. And when their boss turns to introduce me as Ms. Monroe, Department of Homeland Security, and when he says ma'am before every answer, they'll understand. Not because I say it, but because they'll see it. The next morning, I arrived at Ridgetech Solutions HQ at 8:42 a.m. Their new building gleamed with polished glass and brushed steel. All the effort to look cutting edge on the outside, at least. Inside, the security team barely glanced at me. Once they scanned my badge. "Good morning, Ms. Monroe," the front desk attendant said, her voice brisk and respectful. "Your conference room is on the 9th floor. Everything's set up as requested." I nodded and made my way to the elevator. Wool blazer crisp, hair pinned back, heels clicking with purpose. No military uniform today, just the quiet armor of competence. My name was already printed on the placard inside the glass conference room. Tessa Monroe, Lead Assessment Officer, DHS Cyber Division, right beside the federal seal. I arranged my documents, reviewed the flagged sections again, then waited. At 9:01. The Ridgetech team entered. I didn't stand. Melanie was the first to walk in, her stilettos striking the floor like a drumbeat of ambition. Greg trailed behind her, followed by half a dozen consultants, and 2 men in navy suits. And then came my father. He stopped in the doorway like someone had slapped him. Tessa. I met his eyes. "Good morning," I said, neutral as stone. "Please have a seat." Melanie blinked, confused. What is this? Why are you?" She didn't finish the sentence. Because right then, Director Alden there, Federal Client Liaison, stepped in. "Ms. Monroe," he said warmly, extending his hand. "Appreciate you taking point on this one. Your notes on the earlier draft were spot on." "Thank you, sir," I replied. Then he turned to the Ridge team. "Everyone, I hope you've reviewed the assessment criteria. Ms. Monroe will be leading today's review. She's our final approval officer." Melanie's jaw twitched. Greg's eyes flicked to the folder in front of me. Dad's face looked like someone had erased every line of certainty from it. I didn't offer them comfort. I didn't offer them explanation, because for once, they weren't the audience I was speaking to. The meeting started formally. I introduced the agenda, laid out the DHS expectations for cybersecurity integrity, federal compliance, and ethical cost transparency. Then I opened their proposal. It took 5 minutes before the first red flag showed up. I pointed to it calmly. Section 2.3. This configuration introduces unacceptable risk. Was this reviewed by a certified compliance officer? Melanie stammered. "We had someone from procurement look at that. Procurement is not compliance," I said flatly. "Any deployment touching federal networks must go through credentialed review. This alone would disqualify the bid." Dead silence. I moved to the next section. Budget overages in 5.6 don't align with federal cap standards. Your resource mapping doesn't justify the proposed spend. Greg spoke up this time. We planned to update those before final submission." I looked at him. "This is your final submission." His mouth opened slightly, then closed. I wasn't angry. I wasn't vengeful. I was precise. And that was worse. For an hour and 23 minutes, I walked them through every flaw, every risk, every missing certification, and false assurance. And the whole time, I watched their faces shift from shock to confusion, from discomfort to a dawning understanding. They had no idea who I had become. By the time I closed the folder and folded my hands, Director Alden leaned forward. "Ms. Monroe," he said, "based on your assessment, what's your recommendation?" I looked him in the eye. "Conditional rejection. I'll grant a 2-week revision period, but only if the updated draft includes full compliance certification and restructuring of the system's framework. If that's not completed, I'll recommend we pull the contract." He nodded once. "Agreed." Melanie's pen slipped from her hand. Greg looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. And Dad didn't say a word. Not until the room emptied. When only the 3 of them remained. My father, my sister, and Mihi finally stepped forward. "Tessa," his voice was low. "Why didn't you say anything?" I looked at him evenly. "I did, just not in ways you ever listened to." Melanie crossed her arms. "You seriously lead this division? Since when?" 2 years, I replied. "Before that, I built the digital framework you're trying to mimic." Greg let out a breath, like he'd been holding it the whole meeting. You could have warned us." I stared at him. "Why?" "So I could be ignored in advance instead of in person." He had no reply. My father sat down slowly at the edge of the conference table, all that bluster from dinner the night before gone. "You know," he murmured, "we always thought you gave up, that you settled. But what I saw in that room." He looked up at me, stunned. "You didn't just grow up, you outgrew us." Didn't nod. I didn't agree. I didn't need to, because everything I had built, the career, the trust, the authority, was real with or without their recognition. But this time, they had no choice but to see it. After the meeting, I stayed behind to finish my report notes. The conference room had cleared. Just the low hum of the AC, a few stray pens, and the smell of bitter coffee left behind. I stood by the window, overlooking the DC skyline. I'd been in rooms with senators, I'd briefed cyber threat analysts from 6 agencies, but this one held something different, not just authority, but closure. A soft knock on the glass made me turn. It was Melanie, still in her heels, still in control of her posture. Her voice was quieter. "Can I come in?" I nodded once. She stepped inside and closed the door. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Just two women standing in opposite versions of the life we once thought we'd live. "You were incredible in there," she said finally. No sarcasm, no edge, just honest. "I don't think I've ever seen a room listen that hard." I raised an eyebrow. "Even you?" She half smiled. "Even me?" She glanced down, twisting the ring on her finger. "Look, I know I've been hard on you. I thought I was helping. I thought if I pushed you enough, you'd come back to something stable, something predictable." "You thought I had failed," I said plainly. "I did," she admitted, "and that's on me. But today, I saw what you've really built." Her voice wavered, and I was jealous. That stunned me more than anything else she could have said. Melanie, the golden one, the CEO in waiting, jealous. She nodded at my silence. "You don't pretend, you don't show off, you just do the work. And today, everyone respected you for it, including me." I took a breath. For the first time since we were kids, I saw her not as the star but as a sister. "Well," I said softly, 2 weeks. You still have time to fix the proposal." She smirked. "Already emailed my team. I used your notes. Hope that's okay." I gave her the faintest smile. "It is." That night, I sat in my apartment. The sun had set over the Potomac. My kitchen smelled like takeout. Lo mein and cheap soy sauce. My walls were lined with plaques and photos from the field, some framed, some still in boxes. I never decorated much. It always felt temporary. But tonight, the place felt still. And there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Dad standing there alone, holding a manila envelope and a bottle of ginger ale. "Didn't know what you drink," he said gruffly, "but I remembered you never liked wine." I stepped aside and let him in. He looked around slowly. "This is impressive. You live here alone?" "I do. No roommate. No boyfriend," he added with a forced chuckle. "Not right now," I replied calmly. He sat on the edge of the couch like he wasn't sure he was allowed to take up space. After a pause, he handed me the envelope. Inside was a framed photo, one I didn't recognize. It was me, from the DHS summit last year, standing on stage, shaking hands with the Undersecretary of Defense. A massive screen behind me read, "National Recognition for Cyber Defense Innovation. Tessa Monroe, you printed this?" I asked. He cleared his throat. "I had it in my office. Been up for a while now." I just didn't know how to say any of it. I looked at him. This man who once told me I was wasting my potential, who sat through dinners praising Melanie while ignoring me entirely. Now, sitting here, handing me proof that he had been watching, just too proud or too late to admit it. "I thought success looked like a corner office," he said quietly. "But what you did in that room today, it changed something. In me." He met my eyes. "I was wrong about you. About everything." He stood and raised the ginger ale slightly, like a quiet toast, to my daughter. The one who didn't follow the map bet built her own. We clinked glasses. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't perfect, but it was real. A few weeks later, my sister invited me to a staff dinner at Ridgetech. She introduced me formally as a federal officer, and someone who had saved the project. Some staff looked shocked, some nodded in recognition, but the best part was that no one questioned it. Later, as I was leaving, one of her board members stopped me in the hall, an older man with silver hair and a Ridgetech pin on his lapel. "You're the one who grilled them last month, right?" I smiled. That was me. He nodded respectfully. Well done, ma'am. Ma single quotes am the word echoed like a quiet anthem. Not because I needed it, not because I craved it, but because after a lifetime of being underestimated, of being seen as the lesser one, the invisible one, I had become undeniable. I used to think recognition was the victory, that if I could just prove myself to them, they'd see my worth, but standing in that boardroom, leading, commanding, deciding, I realized something bigger. The real win was that I no longer needed them to believe in me, because I did, and that was enough. So if they call you nothing, if they dismiss your path, or minimize your choices, let them laugh, let them doubt. And when the time comes, walk into the room, calm, clear, unshakable, and let your presence answer every question they never bothered to ask, because power doesn't come from proving yourself to people who never looked. It comes from becoming someone they can no longer ignore.